Welcome back to the Yoga Chat. I'm your host, Montana,
I'm your host, May.
and it's season 2, bitches. All right, so
And we
clearly
have
we're
Tom
excited.
Cruise here
Yeah,
today.
we have Tom Cruise.
He
No,
loves
we have
yoga.
our guest is way better than Tom Cruise and way taller than Tom Cruise, for what it's worth. So today we have the amazing and the one and only Julie Larcinese. Julie has been practicing yoga for about 4 years. She grew up 20 miles south of Pittsburgh, but has lived in Pittsburgh for the past 18 years. Um, and she's an administered CPR. She has administered CPR a countless number of times, which is her fun fact, which is wild and crazy. And I didn't actually know that. So,
I
hi,
almost left it
Julie.
blank because I'm like, I don't really have a fun fact,
That's
but
a
I'll throw
fun
this in
fact.
That's a
there.
fact.
I
That is
like it.
It's not really fun.
something.
It's a fact.
Were you
An
just like in a
interesting
place
fact.
where an emergency happened?
Yeah, when I worked at Presby, I
Oh,
that was
okay.
part of
That
my
makes sense.
job was being on like the code response team. And yeah, I've been on many of codes where I've done
Oh,
chest compressions more times than I can count. Not like in a hospital setting. Obviously, you don't do mouth-to-mouth resuscitation because you put in
right.
an airway and resuscitate them that way, but I've assisted with that and yeah, squeezed a bag for many of hours for
That's crazy.
people to breathe.
Well,
Yeah.
if
I
anyone
hope
ever
I
gets
never
into
have to do
trouble,
that.
make sure they're around Julie.
Yeah.
Save your ass. Just
Cool.
like she does
So,
to us all day long at YogaSix
yeah.
South Hills.
She does. So Julie is the amazing GM of YogaSix South Hills, and starting January 1st, she's going to be the GM of YogaSix Wexford. So
Woo-hoo.
pretty exciting stuff. Yeah. She's also signed up for the 200 hour coming up in January, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's going to be awesome. So, Julie, to kick us off, will you just give us a little background on who you are and where you come from and what led you to where you're at now?
Yeah. So I grew up in Elizabeth Township, for those of you that are from the Pittsburgh or Pennsylvania area. It's about 20 minutes south of the city, but you have to trek all the way down 51. So, I'm sorry, it's 20 miles. It takes much longer than 20 minutes, though.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, it's a pretty small little town. You know, once I was in my 20s and, after high school, I went to a few different colleges. Didn't really land with me. I was more into being a bad girl in college than college itself. Ended up back at home with my parents. That really didn't resonate with me either. And then whenever I was in my early 20s, like I was 21, I had a family friend that worked for a sleep lab, and they were looking for people as like a full-time job. That was like on the job training because they were really looking to expand, and it was to test people for sleep disorders. As somebody that struggled sleeping my whole life, I was like, oh, this is cool. Like, I'll get to, watch people while they're sleeping, and thought it was, very naive, thought I would be doing things with like dream research and all this crazy stuff. And yeah, that was total opposite. It was just testing people specifically for sleep apnea. And then after they were diagnosed with sleep apnea, they would come in for a second study where you would make adjustments while they slept with a CPAP machine on. Did that for a few years, got registered in that. At that point, I was like, okay, I can't work night shifts and do this forever. I'm going to go to school for something that correlates to this, just because I've already invested 4 or 5 years into doing this. And I decided to go to school for respiratory therapy. Moved closer to the city at that point, was still living in the Elizabeth area, but then moved closer to the city at that point for school. I went to school on the north side, and then a large part of my schooling was going to all of the hospitals in the Pittsburgh area. And then after I graduated respiratory school, I continued to test people for sleep disorders as like a part-time job, but then I got a full-time job working at Presby in the cardiothoracic ICU. So I would see patients that were post-op from having heart transplants and lung transplants, and kind of like the sickest of the sick in the Pittsburgh area were patients that we cared for in our unit. And yeah, that was very grueling work. Not the job itself was very sad and very hard to see because it was you saw a lot more unsuccessful cases than successful cases, unfortunately. And it just really kind of started to develop this negative condensation or negative mindset towards standard Western medicine for me, just in the way it's approached in our country and the different rules and how they're different for state to state, person to person, income to income. And then, just the hospital setting in itself is just very grueling with the hours and whatnot. I had kind of felt my worst when I worked at the hospital, even though I'd gone from working steady night shifts to working like different shifts. It was just, it was worse switching back and forth. So I just really wanted a job that was like normal hours, 9 to 5. I was sick of doing all these weird shifts and things. So then whenever I was right before I turned 30, I got a job working for a large medical device manufacturer. I had a few different roles with that job. It was pretty good at first. I learned a lot about business in that role, and a lot about sales, people. It was kind of like the business degree that I never got, but was always kind of interested in. And then in working for Philips, I had a few different roles, but my last role I accepted in February of 2020. And it was a customer facing, prior to that, I had worked, at their corporate office in Murraysville. But then in 2020, I accepted a job that was customer facing, and my territory was Florida and South Georgia. So in February of 2020, I moved to Florida, was living with some family at first, just because I was going to be traveling a lot with this role. Was there for about a month, was traveling a lot right at the height of the pandemic. They put a halt on our travel plans, and I was staying with, at the time, some family that was pretty elderly. They had some health problems. I had been in and out of doctor's offices, training them on our software. Didn't feel comfortable going there, so I just got in my car and drove the 16 hours back here to Pittsburgh. And Brad he and I had met like since 6 months before this. So he was going to actually rent my house because the lease was up on the house that he was renting, because he's not really from this area. And then, so I just came back here. Long story short, ended up not leaving, not going back to Florida. That job changed. My role in that job changed a lot when they announced this big recall. And so I was trying for a while to find a new job. And at that same time, I was going through some health things that really got me, looking at health in a more holistic sense. I met a really great naturopathic doctor. And it was the first time I really had ever felt heard or seen in a medical setting, whether I was working in it or a patient in it. And that's whenever I was introduced to yoga and different forms of healing. So then I was just at that point really wanting to get out of healthcare, which sounds corny, but like, it's whenever I learned about manifesting and those types of things. And I remember in January of 2022, I did Gabby Bernstein's like 20-day manifestation challenge. And, still looking for a new job. Constantly, it became kind of like my full-time job while I was working my full-time job, but it took about a year. And then in December of 2022, I found just like the part-time wellness advisor role for YogaSix. And I was like, at least this is something to get me out of my house, gets me away from my computer, dealing with these angry people from a computer all day long. And it gets me out with people, doing something that I'm passionate about. And maybe I'll meet some other people that don't think that, breathing and doing yoga and plants and things can heal you more so than a doctor with a boatload of degrees in debt can. And lo and behold, I started working there the first day. It was great. like Hannah was amazing. I was like, oh my gosh, I've like found my people just in like these first conversations that I had had with the initial people there. And then the next day, we get this back at work and my full-time job, and we get this like peculiar meeting invite from like the director. And even our boss is like, guys, this will be replacing our usual Tuesday meeting. And it was the call that I had personally been waiting for years, and that our whole team was being let go in this mass layoff across the whole globe, really, with the company. And it ended up being such a blessing. Like, I had been with the company long enough that I got a okay enough severance package that I wasn't panicking. And yeah, I went back from my next wellness advisor training shift at YogaSix, and I was like, well, come March, I don't work there anymore, so you can put me on as many shifts that you like. And about a week later, Hannah was like, well, we've been looking for an assistant manager. Is that something you'd be interested in? I'm like, absolutely. And that was like a big thing. Even now, like, I'll have people ask me, like, whenever I tell them I'm manage a yoga studio, they'll say, oh, that's a full-time job. And like,
Only dude.
it just happened like a week ago at a networking event. And like, yeah, it's a full-time job.
And then some. So
And then some. And yeah, there's multiple people that it's a full-time job for. But I don't know where I was going with that. But yeah, no, it was just like, initially, I feel like a lot of people, more so like my family and things like that, kind of viewed it as like I was taking this huge step back, because the role that I had at Phillips, I was, it was a higher level position. And I never felt like that, because first of all, like the community and what I'm gaining from working at YogaSix, and I've learned more from Montana, May, Chrissy, Jared, our entire team, than I ever learned from the, people that I worked with elsewhere, where they were just kind of like in the same boat as me, coasting to retirement, or just dealing with nothing but problems constantly, that there's no room or space in the atmosphere for growth or helping people develop themselves. So I knew that, yes, this might be a step back in certain people's eyes and in certain areas, but if I stay the course, it will be more rewarding on so many different levels. And it has definitely proved to be that. And yeah, I feel like it's a cool, trajectory and story to have taken. I wouldn't really have seen it going that way. I remember it was funny. At the same time, the same naturopath doctor, I like haven't seen her in a few years, but I actually had an appointment with her this morning.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, like, it came up of whenever I was seeing her was like right when I was in the thick of it with my previous job, and so upset about that. And she was just like, I mean, and her vibes are very like hippie, she's like, I mean, you just gotta really pray on it, and I think the right thing will just come your way. And she was right.
Yeah.
Did you tell her today that you manifested your way into something completely different?
I did.
What'd she say?
She loved it. I mean, she definitely was like, that I think is a lot of what got me to be to where I am today, of like advocating for myself. And because I've been kind of like dealing with some health things again, and went back to a traditional Western doctor, and like just what she was recommending, just like intuitively, I was like, I can't go and fill this prescription, or I can't like bring myself to take it without looking at it in a more holistic sense. And just like from those little pieces of things that I've taken from her, it really has completely changed the entire trajectory of my life. And she was the one that introduced me to Gabby Bernstein. Like, I would have never found out about the little manifestation challenge, or a lot of the tools that I learned, from reading her books and listening to her podcast and stuff. But
Where is the doctor located?
in Dormont.
Oh, cool. So she's
Yeah.
super close too.
Yeah.
What's her
Amazing.
name, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah. Maureen Teague. It's called Trillium Natural Medicine.
Maureen Teague.
Yes.
Cool. Yeah, I think it's like such a like uh, our country has lost, in my opinion, the balance between the two. And so often, like when I talk about taking like a holistic path to or making holistic choices when it comes to like health and wellness or sickness or whatever, oftentimes it's like, oh my God, like you hate modern medicine. And I'm like, no, dude, no, I don't. So it's like, yeah, I think it's important to remember like the balance of the two. And I think that's really cool that like you said intuitively, you're like, I can't get myself to do XYZ, what the, regular modern medicine doctor is telling me to do, because you probably don't think it's the only way. Right. Like,
Right.
and then of course, if you get to a point where it's like, this is the best way, then you'll take the prescription, or do
Right.
whatever it is. But yeah, I think finding a balance of the two is just it has been lost for decades, but I feel like we're getting back. As
Yeah.
It's like not
more
even
people like
lost
that.
the balance so much as everybody wants to like be so polarizing about the subject. So like we have a weekend in YTT and you'll see this eventually, Julie, but we do a weekend about Ayurveda and it's very basic, like, kindergarten level Ayurveda, but we watch a couple videos and there's this one doctor, he's a Western doctor, he's an MD, and he's also like an Ayurvedic doctor. So he talks about how in our country we like it somehow turned political for us to like choose one or the other when
Totally.
actually there's really space for both. Like Ayurvedic medicine and holistic medicine and natural medicine is something that you can incorporate in your life as like a way to just stay well and prevent
Mhm.
illness and overall like life quality. And then obviously if you get into a car accident or you get cancer, like you might lean into the Western medicine because you have to go to the hospital and you need surgery and you need chemotherapy or whatever. But I just
Right.
liked it was like one of the first times in years I heard someone in a position of being a doctor of Western medicine say, like, this isn't all there is. There are ancient, like, methods and things that go back so far beyond any of us that like they're valid and they work. And it's
Yeah.
just nice to I think there should be more Western doctors like that
Mhm.
recognize the value in both of those things and not just like the once a year you go into the doctor that they tell you need to lose 5 pounds and then they're like, well, see you later. And it's like,
Right.
thanks.
Right.
Thanks,
Yeah.
dude. I
Just
this
eat
is so
less.
valuable to me. You just
Yeah.
told me
Thanks.
I'm fat and that
Yeah.
I now I get to go home.
Yeah.
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 Wow.
And thanks for asking like what I eat, how much water I drink, how often I sleep, and how much
Right.
exercise, how much
Or
sunlight
how I
I'm
eat
getting.
healthy every day.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
exercise religiously. I take care of
It's
my
like,
mind.
do
Like,
you smoke? Do
just
you drink?
right.
Do you do drugs? And it's like,
Does
there's so
any of
Yeah.
many
this matter to you?
other
No.
questions that people are
Right.
going to actually answer honestly too.
Well, right,
Um,
exactly. And that's kind of like I feel like the story of most people. That actually happened the other day. One of my friend's kids, they had a I don't know if you guys remember having to go to the doctor in school or the nurse and
nurse.
they
Oh
weigh
yeah.
you, they would do your ears, your eyes. So apparently they line the kids up, they bring them in to weigh them, and then they tell them if they're overweight, like right on the spot.
Oh,
And so, like, Maya
No.
came home from school today and she's like, a lot of girls were crying at school today. And I was like, why? She's like, well, because the school nurse told them that they were all too fat. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, and these are just kids that, like, if you see them walking down the street, they look like
That's
perfectly
terrible.
healthy, normal kids. Like, I know them personally, so I know what they eat. They're just happy, healthy kids. I just can't
Yeah.
imagine that's like, I still don't understand how that is like our big barometer of health is just like how much
how
you
much
weigh
you
with
weigh.
no
Right.
inspection into the deeper parts of how you live your life and what you do with your body and what you put in your mouth. But
Well,
that's
that's
a whole
like
different
just
thing.
in our like my meeting with her today, like I finally like feel hopeful for the first time because she was like I'm like rattling off all these symptoms and you know, like starts asking me then some other questions. And like the one thing I said, she was like, oh, starts asking me more questions. And here she thinks I have like symptoms of long or like chronic Lyme disease.
Wow.
And yeah, and like the way that she explained it, because the symptoms I've been having are a lot of like mental symptoms, with my mood and whatnot. And like the way that she explained it is it's a disease that creates inflammation in the brain. So like by not getting these toxins out of your body and then just sitting there and then other toxins in our environment, it just like exacerbates it all. And like for the first time, I just feel like hopeful that it's not just like this is going to be my baseline. Whereas
Yeah.
like that's the feeling that I get from, or it's like in the Western medicine space, then you have this one range of chemicals that you can take that might fix one piece of the problem of the chemical imbalance in the brain, but it could be all these other factors as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Like getting to the root rather than like putting a Band-Aid over the symptoms.
Exactly. And she like leads her appointment with that same type of analogy explained a little bit differently. And it's just like, why isn't that a common way?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, taking it a different path, I would like to know, because May and I are obviously yoga teachers. And so we've talked on this podcast about how it can be challenging once you become a teacher to stay consistent with your practice. So I can only imagine what it's like to manage a yoga studio. And how does that, like, when did you first start practicing yoga? And like, how has becoming a manager of a yoga studio changed the way that you practice, good, bad, or indifferent?
Yeah.
Since it's a super chill job.
Yeah.
Right. The chillest.
No stress.
Super chill, no stress.
Every customer service is just the easiest job because everyone's always nice to you.
Everybody's so nice.
Walks around in linen pants and lights incense all day, and that's just her whole job.
And I have the toughest backbone on the planet that it's perfect for.
For those of you listening, the past 30 seconds has been complete sarcasm.
So I started practicing in a studio in probably like 2021. Whenever I drove my ass back to Pittsburgh at the beginning of the pandemic and told Brad that I was moving in with him in my own house. It's very weird times, but it's weird times for all. I use that time a lot to focus on like my diet and my walks with Bentley.
Wow.
They were what got me through. And then that led to, we put a gym in the basement and I was just like in the best shape of my life. And I had started running again. I had ran probably 10-ish years ago. But never really for reasons like of my own. I ran because I had like groups of friends and like my sisters would run, and it was more of like a social thing that wasn't actually very social. That's a other story. And I never really like enjoyed it that much. So I just started running again out of my own enjoyment, like being outside, listening to music, and I absolutely loved it. And so I was training for the Pittsburgh half marathon in 2022. Yeah, 2022. And was just started like dealing with a bunch of pain, like a bunch of hip pain specifically. I was like, not stretching a lot, but was doing a lot of like other workouts to supplement my running. So, and then at the same time, started seeing this holistic doctors, reading all of different books about trauma storing itself in the body. And like all of these books are mentioning yoga and breathing. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to actually go and take an actual yoga class in a studio. But I came from the mindset before that like yoga is another form of exercise, but I need intense exercise because I want certain results. Like I was doing, before the pandemic, I did group like HIIT style workouts. I did kickboxing workouts. It had to be like super intense and it took a lot for me to sweat. So it had to be the harder, the better. And, I started going to yoga. It was like a 6 a.m. class on Tuesday mornings. And I absolutely loved it. And then the studio that I was going to also offered yin classes, so I would take those, and I really, really liked that. It helped a lot with, you know, my running and my hip pain. But at the same time, I was also like going through some family stuff that, you know, I was putting up a front that it wasn't affecting me emotionally, but it was. And I was noticing the yoga was helping with that too. And I just started practicing more consistently in the studio and kind of like getting away from the mentality that the workouts had to be super strenuous and physical, and just like kind of listening more to what my body needed then. And yeah, that's how my journey to my mat kind of started. And now I would say, yeah, then once I started at YogaSix, kind of just as a wellness advisor and as an assistant manager, well, then at the same time decided I wanted to run a full marathon. Like, so I didn't run it all. I ran the Pittsburgh half in 2022. I didn't run it all in 2023. That was like right after I started working at YogaSix and like and meeting Kaja and like all the other people at the studio that ran. I had like such FOMO, like race weekend. I think we did like a in studio class for like anybody participating, like a free class. And so that same week in May that I started as assistant manager, I was talking to Kaja about running, about like the races and stuff. And like I was telling her, I was like, you know, I really want to do, I've done a few halves now. I really want to do a full. And it just so happened her husband and my boyfriend Brad are from like the Detroit area. So I had ran like a half marathon in Detroit like a few months before the Pittsburgh half in 2023. So it was in 2022 as well. And so we started talking about the full there. It's a really cool full marathon because it goes into Canada. It's not, the elevation isn't anything like it is in Pittsburgh. So we decided, or I decided I was going to sign up for it. And then she signed up like a few weeks later. And then I also didn't really think that out too well either, because I don't really love running in the heat. I would rather run like when it's cold outside than when it's summer. And that marathon's in October. So I was doing like all of my training in the hot months while I'm also like taking, my schedule changed dramatically from working from home in a sense that I worked when I wanted to. So like my favorite time to go running was like 9 a.m. And now most days I worked at the studio at that time of the morning. So I was very inconsistent in my weekly runs, and I was just very consistent with like my long runs on the weekend. But because I could very easily talk myself out of a run whenever it was June and I was done working at 12 or 12:30, but I would just make sure that I stayed very consistent with my yoga classes. And so I was practicing a ton, like in my first year of working at the studio, because I knew that if like, at least my body has the physical strength, and I know I have the mental strength to get me through this race. But yeah, if I were to ever do it again, which that's a long shot, I would definitely put more miles in, because that's very important too. I kind of learned that the hard way. But now, since I took over as GM, my practice has definitely changed. Just because it's hard, like practicing in the same space that you manage, to really get the full benefits of the practice. Like I love our studio and I love our teachers and I love our community, but it's like, it's hard for me to just go and be there and be a student. So it's why I'm really excited. One of the things I'm really excited for January is when things transition for Kat to take over, is to be a student again in our studio and get to be able to, you know, just kind of like roll up my mat after class and head home instead of doing all the other things that I don't do currently.
Yeah.
Wipe down the mirrors.
Yeah.
Clean the toilets. The
Literally.
luxury stuff. So
Everything.
we alluded to like how challenging your role can be. But what would you say like your favorite part about managing a YogaSix studio is, and like what is it that makes you want to continue to show up? And obviously you enjoy it because we're about to go do Wexford together. So like, what is
Yeah.
it that inspires you and that makes you like really love this challenging but rewarding role?
For me, it's just like getting to experience the studio for the first time from the lens of somebody else that is, you know, intimidated to come in or intimidated to try group fitness or has gone through a lot of like challenging things, whether it be with their health or, you know, whatever. Like so many of our members have dealt with so many terrible things, but they still show up and are happy to be there and are happy to see us and just have so much grit, I guess. And that's really the best thing for me is just seeing what fighters we really have in our studio and like all of the things that they go through on a daily basis, but they still make it there and they still show up. They don't give in to those excuses. So that, and then, yeah, just people experiencing it for the first time and just like talking to first timers after a class that maybe had a poor experience elsewhere or just believed, didn't know anything about yoga and they come in, they try a class and like the ones that really get me are like, I almost felt like emotional. Like what? Like, why is that happening? What?
You don't get that after a kickboxing class.
Right.
No.
And I think just too, like we make it so inviting and, I've dealt with weight issues my whole life and body issues and not feeling comfortable in a lot of spaces my entire life. And I remember my very first class was a slow flow class and I like just took it upon myself. I wanted to come in before my phone interview and like see what it was all about because I was also in like corporate interview mode where you really had to do your homework to like sell yourself. Like it wasn't really, not that we don't take our interviews seriously, but it's a little different when you're interviewing for a wellness advisor role. But so I just like went online, booked my class myself, like didn't really utilize the wellness advisor, which like came to bite me in the ass a little whenever I showed up expecting like all I'd really been doing was like yin and hatha yoga in a non-heated space and it's December. So I show up in like a long sleeve, like running shirt and leggings and we're about to practice in a room that's 85 to 90 degrees. But like the space was so welcoming and so inviting that I felt okay taking my shirt off and practicing in just my sports bra because I was dying otherwise. But like that piece of it too means so much to me and that like we really do welcome anybody, like any shape, size, age, whatever your background is, you truly are welcomed at our studio. So that's a big rewarding piece of it for me too.
Couldn't agree with you more on that. My favorite, and this happens like not to toot our own horns here, but a toot a little bit. I hear that a lot, like frequently, several times a week, just people that come in with the expectations of all yoga studios being this place where only like super fit women in Lululemon outfits are like working out and everybody looks the same and everybody practices the same. And I think that it's truly like a surprise for some people to arrive at our studio and see how many different types of people are there in all of the classes. Like it's not just like the restore, the 101, like there are so many, the variety of people in our studio is just unbelievable. And I've had so many people tell me afterwards, like, I've never felt comfortable taking my shirt off in a yoga class before, and I felt comfortable today. Or um, like you guys make everybody feel like they belong, which is like to me, that made me tear up like instantly because
Mhm.
how could you want anything more than that as a person
Mhm.
who, is creating an environment or a community? Like for someone to say you make everyone feel like they belong is just like that's it. That's all there
The
Yeah.
is.
juice.
Yeah, that's the juice.
Totally.
And it's just like I love that you said that because that's my favorite thing about YogaSix too. It's just that like everybody who works there, we all come from such different backgrounds and we're all so different, but we all have this common thing that it's not even the yoga so much as like we all just genuinely so get along in this weird era of weirdness that we are all like, we all just kind of like let our freak flag fly, but it's just like they all work together. And
Yeah.
and we just like there's everybody's just weird, and we want weird, and we accept weird, and we like encourage weird, and it just feels good to be in that place. Like as a person myself, who also, like we all do, no matter who you are, has you have image issues or body issues, or you feel,
Mhm.
you know, uncomfortable or insecure in certain settings, but like I've never once felt that way in that place from the second I walked in, like the first minute I was there. And that, I don't know, I think that says a lot about what everybody there really truly genuinely authentically like believes, and they behave in the way that is like in alignment with those values. So it just, I think that's like, I don't know, it's hard to explain it until you're there, but we talk about it a lot, and it's definitely got this like magic little bubble around it. And
Mhm.
it's because of everybody. It's not one person doing it, it's not two people doing it, it's the whole thing from the top down. And I love our little place
Me too.
very much.
Same. I said to May the other day that if our yoga studio had an aura color, it would be pink, because we have a joy bubble and we want to welcome anyone in the joy bubble. And as soon as someone wants to pop the joy bubble, we're like, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Get out of our joy
And
bubble.
that is
Right.
how, yeah, that's how Mystic Michaela describes it. She's like, pink have their joy bubbles and everyone's welcome, but if you try to pop it, watch the fuck out.
That's so true.
Yeah. And there's something else I was gonna say. Oh yeah, I think too, yeah, I agree with everything you're saying, and it's interesting. Like, I think it's easy to judge a book by its cover, especially in terms of a yoga studio that is a corporate brand, or comes like a national brand that has a corporate, has a corporation out in California. But like, it's just as soon as you walk into the doors and you look past the cover of the book, it's like not corporate at all. And it's wild that I've been to more mom and pop studios. There's great ones. I teach at one, like I love a lot of them.
Yeah.
There's been more times that I've gone to mom and pop studios where I feel um like out of place.
Yeah.
And in my mind, before I started working YogaSix, I assumed it would be backwards. So there's a studio in Pittsburgh that just closed, unfortunately, Yoga Innovations. And so we've been meeting a lot of their students because they've been looking for a new yoga home. And I said to many of them, I'm like, I wish we were meeting under different circumstances. Like, I'm really, really genuinely sorry that your yoga home doesn't exist anymore, because like that has to be devastating. But I'm also really grateful that we get to meet each other. And there was one that had been coming to YogaSix, or still has been coming to YogaSix, and she came to Yoga Flow on last Friday morning, and she had 3 other women with her from Yoga Innovations that hadn't been to YogaSix yet. They took my Yoga Flow class, which is very different than YogaSix. For those of you that know, you know. And afterward, class finished, I cleaned the studio, I walked out, and the 4 of them were still standing outside. And I was like, thanks so much for coming. It was great to meet you. It was great to see you. And they were like, we're just talking about, we heard that, there's also really great classes at YogaSix and you teach there too. And I was like, yeah, totally different vibe. I love both of them for very different reasons, but also a very special space. And the woman who had been going, who brought her friends to Yoga Flow, said to me, she was like, I was really nervous because like I just thought it was going to be corporate yoga. And she was like, but everybody there is so welcoming. And I was like, yeah, they are. They really
That's
are.
like I
Yeah,
don't think people realize, like, yes, it is a national brand, but it's just the name,
it's
you know.
Yeah,
independently owned. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, like and I say we meaning our whole team, but like starting with Chrissy and Jared, the owners, like they really do put so much passion into making it not have a corporate cookie cutter feel. I'm sure there's a way that, Yoga Sixes are ran where they're all just using the same playlists and they're all recycling the same classes, kind of like a lot of boutique fitness in the same necessarily like wheelhouse do it, which, that is going to feel like corporate yoga, whatever that means.
Yeah.
You guys all put so much passion and like you bring so much to the studio with your playlists, your theme classes, and just your classes in general, that is really, and the wellness advisor team too, just really getting to know people. It's hard at a lot of other yoga studios where it's just one person that's checking people in, making sure, memberships are working right and what have you. And you don't have the time to get to know somebody and to know their why. And at the end of the day, that's all people want. They want to be able to talk about their day and their families or their kids or their pets or spouses. And they want to, be treated like a person in their, their third space that they're paying a lot of money to be at and that they love being at, but they also want to feel that they're loved there. And I think that's missing in a lot of
reciprocated
spaces.
Yeah, totally. Couldn't agree more. Well, May, do you have any other? But okay, before we ask our final question, right before we started recording, literally 1 second before, May said, "Don't forget
thinking about
to
it the
ask
whole
your
fucking
big
time.
three."
I've been literally thinking about it the whole fucking time.
So, Julie, what are
Yes.
your big three?
So my sun sign is Scorpio.
It's
Shout
almost
out
her birthday, and she
Scorpios.
doesn't want anyone to know that, but I'm gonna whisper it into the mic. She's having a big one this year. Okay, continue.
I am. Yes, since Montana won't tell people. Yes, I will be 40 in a few weeks. I'm a Scorpio through and through. That is my sun sign. My rising sign is Sagittarius, and my moon sign is Leo.
Oh, aren't you a fiery little
So
fucker?
good.
Yeah. Yes.
But then the Scorpio like balances it out, and that's
Right.
what makes you like
Mysterious.
Yeah. Truly.
Tell me all your secrets, but I won't tell you mine.
Yeah, exactly.
If anybody wants to buy Julie anything for her birthday, she loves tie-dye and crystals and mushrooms and all the cute little things that you might see a hot festival girl wearing.
Yeah, she loves deep bass.
Yes.
That was one of the things too, when Julie first got hired as a wellness advisor, Hannah, who was the GM at the time, who still teaches with us, was like, "I just hired this girl and she's a forest girl." And I was like, "Say less." So she goes to electric forest. And that's literally what I say to all my friends outside of the yoga studio. I'm like, "Our YogaSix GM, she's a forest girl." And they're like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, you should come take class."
Well, because most people in Pittsburgh don't know what it is. And when Brad and I first met, like when I first met his friends, they're telling me all about, like, they'd like just came from Forest in 2019, and they're like telling us all about this festival. And I was like, "When can we go to that?" And he's like, it's only in the summer. And then like he and I met in the fall of 2019. So then we couldn't go for 2 years because of COVID. And since then I've gone to other festivals and nothing's the same.
No,
magical place.
I was there in 2019, and then Julie and I went, not together, but we were there. You were there, right? I went with Hannah.
2022. Yeah.
2022. Yeah, because it was like right after our wedding or right before. I don't remember. And I was like, "We can't go to a festival, Matt. We're paying for a wedding." And he's like, "Forest is back after COVID. We're fucking going to this festival." And I was like, "This is why I'm marrying you.
Yeah.
Let's go."
For sure.
And it was great.
You'd probably be bored with anybody else.
Yeah, truly. I saw this reel yesterday on Instagram that was like, when you meet someone that matches it didn't say freak, that like matches your like insanity or crazy or something. And it was this girl like on a dance floor, like looking like a crazy person. And then this guy ran up to her and like picked her up and started like swinging her around really, really fast. I sent it to Matt. I was like, "It's us." He was like, "I'm embarrassed. That is us, isn't it?" And I was like, "Yeah, at least I'm aware of it." Okay.
Rewind 5 minutes ago, Montana, you go, "Julie loves deep, deep." And I was like, "What the fuck?" And then you say bass. And I was like, okay. I don't know where my mind went, but I was like, this is out of character for Montana to say anything of the sort.
I said, I just got a haircut right before this. And right when she was done cutting it, before she like blew dry, she was like, "Is that enough?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's crazy what a few inches can do." That's what she said. She's like, "You sound like my husband." She's like, this is why we get along." And I was like, "Sorry, it just fell out of my mouth." And she was like, "Stop it." And I was like,
that's also what she said.
Yeah. Okay,
this is why we're friends.
Yeah, exactly.
All
That's
of
why
us.
we have this podcast. So Julie, do you think yoga can change the world? Yes or no, and why?
I do think yoga could change the world. Because movement, community, they're all things that can change the world. If more people found other like-minded people or a space where they felt safe to move their body, to work through their issues, I think there wouldn't be so many people that are sick in so many different ways, that filter our community. And yeah.
Amen.
Bingo. More
That's the
juice.
juice. The magic of breath and movement.
Yes.
Amen.
Yes.
And good people.
Finding
Good
community
people.
in people.
Good people
Yeah.
are everything, dude.
So true.
Sure.
Well, Julie, is there anything else that you'd like to share with us before we head out?
Do you like deep bass or
Bass.
anything else? Just kidding. We'll save that for an after dark chat one day.
Please do.
Yes.
I love deep bass too. Wink, wink.
God.
Oh my. Y'all are
On that
funny.
note,
On that
All
note.
right. Well,
I took it there. I've taken it
this
there
will
again.
be posted tomorrow, but for you two, happy Halloween. And when this is
Yeah.
posted tomorrow, everyone's going to be like, if I see one thing that's Halloween, it is Thanksgiving now officially. And it's
No,
our
it's not.
birthday
It's
month.
Christmas now because Target, literally, I want fall scented candles. That's all I wanted. I wanted a couple more cinnamon or pumpkin candles because they smell nice and they make me happy. And I went to the store the other day and the fucking Christmas ones were already out. And
We sell
to
pumpkin
me,
candles at YogaSix and you get an employee discount.
Yeah, they're really
ooh,
good.
look at you, Miss Saleswoman.
New whole new
So
line
that's
is
great.
like
And
But I like
apple.
the massive ones. Like I burn them for hours. So I need to buy the big fat ones. I like deep, big fat candles.
big fat deep
And
candles.
yeah, big fat deep candles. And I'm sorry, I love Christmas, but it
Yeah,
was like a
but you
week
can't
ago. I
rush.
should still be able to find a fucking pumpkin candle. That's all
Yeah,
I have to say. Namaste, love and light.
100%. And then
That's all
I
I
people
got.
have to
wonder
say,
why we're not
after
in the present
Halloween,
moment.
it's birthday month,
Yeah.
not Christmas.
There we go.
Because not saying that for myself, I'm just
I'm saying it for
fun
myself.
fact. There are the most Scorpios on our team at YogaSix South Hills. So
Really?
shout out Scorpios. Yes.
I
Lydia,
know that.
Kat's birthday is next week. Gina's birthday is the 11th. Myself. And then we have Montana, our one and only Sagittarius. Or no, I think Angelina's a Sagittarius as well.
Yes, she
But
is.
in addition to our YogaSix family, my whole family of origins birthdays are in November as well. And
My
God's
sister
birthday
and
is in
mom are
November.
It's
Scorpio
because
November babies.
we're Valentine's Day babies, not to gross you out or anything,
It
but that's
is.
what we are.
Yeah.
Oh.
My birthday is 9 months
Ew.
and 2 days
I
from
know.
Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
Ew.
Ew was right.
Ooh.
All right. Well, on that note, since everyone's hopefully thinking about their parents conceiving them, we'll see you next time. Thank you so much, Julie. This was awesome, and we love you. And
We
we're
love
so
you, Julie.
excited and honored
Love you
that
guys.
you are our first guest for season 2.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you for
All right,
coming.
y'all. Happy
Bye.
Halloween. Bye.